the ex lives in Brooklyn, I texted him because okay, actually this is
Oh,
funny.
you love getting that text from your ex and she's like, hi, I'm writing this piece about you.
I, James Francis, hereby request Josh Ovalle for collaboration with the Internet is Dead podcast. Please, Josh, be a guest on the podcast. We miss you.
Wait, what were you doing
So,
in London? Were you just like doing work stuff?
so my boyfriend is a cinematographer and he like goes and does work jobs, and I call myself like the stowaway girlfriends or like
That's
carry-on
awesome.
girlfriends.
Like the band girlfriend, like my boyfriend's in a band, but he's a cinematographer type
Yeah.
deal. Got it.
Yeah. So I'm just like in that position. It was like he was doing like a color job, which is when they do like post stuff. And I know people there now because I've gone there a handful of times. And so it was one of those times where I had nothing going on. And I was like, oh, work, it'll be so great. And then I was just in the Airbnb, like trying to breathe through my nose. And
I'm glad you feel
I'm glad
better.
I'm glad you're feeling better.
I'm back. I'm back.
We're so back. We're so freaking back.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on. We're
Thank you
so
for
excited to
having
chat about
me.
writing and stuff.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was fun. You guys, I think you literally emailed me on New Year's or New Year's
Oh,
Eve
did we?
Oh,
or
wow.
something. I could
I
be
believe
wrong,
it.
or that was something. Maybe that was something else. I think I should have like a catfish email, but in my head I connected those. Like,
I sent you an email like a really long time ago, like when I was like in my ex-boyfriend's house sending inquiry emails. And it's awesome because now we're broken up.
wow, congratulations.
Oh, it sucks, guys. But
No,
no, I was
congrats.
reading your one piece that was about relationships and I loved it so much. An ex lives in Brooklyn piece
Oh
on
yeah.
Substack.
That piece is so
That piece
good.
is so sweet. A topic I've been thinking about a lot, and just like watching like a peek into someone else like visiting their ex is so interesting because I love writing about exes. Like that's my favorite kind of writing.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a fun one because it was like we broke up in 2017. So it was a very long process of I mean, at the time we had each other blocked on Instagram when we met up. And yeah, and now we're chill, which is weird to say because for so long I had also kind of built this story of not that he was my enemy, but just kind of, when you have something to push against that helps you, that guides you in a way.
Yeah.
So, but that was a really trippy, fun one to write. I almost didn't put it out, and my current boyfriend was like, unfortunately, this is good, and you should put it.
Yeah, no, I really loved that piece. I feel like reading it, there were so many, like literally everything in it just felt like it verbalized or like put into words exactly like how I felt about all my relationships and like just having an
That's
ex,
so
and it was really
sweet.
sweet.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, thank you for reading it.
Yeah, of course.
It still
I'm
feels
like,
weird that people read the Substack at all.
Yeah.
yeah, your Substack is so amazing and wonderful. And I was gonna ask you, like, in terms of writing about relationships, because that's something I've like seen you do, and I know you also just kind of talk about like just like life and spirituality a little bit. I was like curious about if you feel weird writing about people you know and like turning it parasocial in a way for an audience, because I was having this discussion with a friend recently and I feel like it's a really interesting point of conversation of, is that wrong? Because to me, I'm like, I will write anything and like write about real people, and that's like feels way like I'm way better at writing about that too. So it feels like, I don't know, I always am like, well, no one's like gonna like have negative repercussions from this. People are just like reading it and everyone's a human, but I know that people take it in different ways. So I'm curious about what your perspective of that is.
Yeah, I think each piece that I write is case by case basis. Because there are things that have happened and I have specifically thought, oh, this would actually be a good story. But I'm not in the place where I can tell it, or I know that person isn't in the place for me to tell it. And even like the ex lives in Brooklyn, I texted him because okay, actually this is
Oh,
funny.
you love getting that text from your ex and she's like, hi, I'm writing this piece about you.
It's like the hi girl text, but like the hey, I'm writing a piece about you version.
Literally. So we have a specific history. That ex actually, I think, taught me this before anyone else did. I used to be I was kind of like feral growing up and very unsocialized. I grew up in a very odd, I always call it like almost cultish, where I truly wasn't socialized in the way that like you meet a dog in the pound and they're like, oh, he's sweet, but he's you know. Um, and so I just didn't know certain things. Like I didn't know, I was always like, I was a genuinely like nice person. And I think that that carried me through, but there were certain things where I would say something and someone would be like, you shouldn't, ask someone their age or something like, along those lines. Right.
Mm.
And so I made this art video about this person when I was dating him. And it basically was more about, it was just poetic. And in it, I I think I say like, I've fallen in love with him, or I didn't know that I could, and I had to let go in order to do that. And I didn't give him a warning about that. But again, it's a random ass art show, a tiny little, my little my little art video, and I just didn't think about it. And it really struck him. And he said, you can make art about me, but you should tell me before. You have to tell me beforehand. And it was an interesting thing because in that moment, I realized that for everyone, it's going to be a negotiation. And everyone will handle it in a different way, right? At the time, I was kind of like, no one's gonna fucking care. It's my story. It's my way of delivering it. But when we involve other people, it becomes a part of their story. And that was just a really good learning experience for me. And at the time, I was kind of I didn't really understand the impact of what he was telling me, but it was actually very helpful because yeah, it's just everyone is going to react differently. And so with that X piece, I didn't want to put it out because I didn't want to text him.
Yeah.
And so then when my boyfriend said, this is unfortunately very good, it's because he knew that I would have to be like, hey, just
hey girly, just wrote this piece about you.
yeah, remember when we hung out last week? It inspired something. So
but that's so normal, like
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, it's and then my ex was great. I said you can read it if you want, and if there's anything you want me to take out that's personal to you, because that's also my thing too, is I think it's almost a writing challenge to be able to adapt something so that when something goes out into the world, it doesn't hopefully, again, the intention is it doesn't hurt the person you're talking about, right?
yeah.
And so I was prepared to do that, and he didn't even ask to read it. He just said, thank you so much for telling me. He stuck to his word. He was like, you can do whatever you want, but just tell me so I know it's coming.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very interesting thing because Substack is public,
Yeah.
and I often will just sort of treat it like I've gotten to the point now where I treat it a little bit more like a journal. When I first started, I had a different mindset for what I wanted my Substack to be, but now it's a lot more whatever I'm feeling or thinking about at the time. So
Yeah. No, I feel like that's like a concept that I struggle with a lot as a writer where I just don't have a filter a lot of the time. So to me, I'm like, oh, everything's fine. Like it's not really weird if I write about a person or a relationship who everyone knows because like, I don't know. But yeah, I like the way you verbalize that. I think it's an interesting line to walk to because there's so much value in it. Like reading real experiences, especially, there's always just something else to it than something you can make up. And I don't know. I think I was having like a whole conversation about it with a friend about just like turning people in communities into parasocial people,
yeah.
especially too, like even like outside of relationships, just like a scene too, which I think is really interesting because we love to make people celebrities in our heads. And it like
Totally.
definitely is something people probably like pounce on the moment they see a chance to, even if that's not the intention.
Yeah, I think well, it's almost a natural thing for us to do that. And it's something I've always tried to check in myself because like I grew up in LA, and so you see, like I was like a kid and I would say Don Cheadle, I don't know if you know who that is, but he would be at the Whole Foods and at the time he was a really big actor, Donald Sutherland, who's like he passed away recently, but that was like an iconic actor, told me to tie my shoes when I was a kid, you know, outside the market. My
Yeah.
dad was like, do you know who that is? And I obviously I was truly 7.
Truly.
But
Yeah.
they were knockoff Doc Martens,
Oh my God.
lime
Oh my
green
God.
patent leather. So cool.
Wait, that's
Um,
awesome to wear at
That's
7
so
years
cute.
old.
Amazing. It was
Yeah.
incredible. I could get those back. But yeah, you kind of, when you're in those environments, and then I worked in restaurants in LA, and you see celebrities there, and like true celebrities, you know, and you realize that they just want to like eat their fucking poached chicken salad and not be perceived in that moment, and people will continually try to not let them have that, and not let them have their humanity that is really the only thing that we have. So we're all
Yeah.
just born with that, and that's it. And it's like, it feels with social media, there's just little ways of stripping it down piece by piece. So I do try to check that within myself, the parasocial thing, but again, it's like that's just there now. We're having to actively fight against it instead of it being a thing we can take on, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like even if
Yeah.
it's not what you intend, like someone could read it and then just add that on there too. It's just like a thing that exists.
Yeah.
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 I'm curious, like what you were saying about growing up, like not being like socialized, like in this
Yeah.
occultish way, and also just growing up in LA. Just like kind of your background and like everything that like led you to where you are now, and like everything that's shaped you, or like anything that feels important to how you grew up.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so. I grew up in Los Angeles, but my parents were very like, my dad worked in a restaurant, and my mom actually got sick when I was 4, which was sort of when I like the 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 socialization stopped almost, because she was the, you know, the person that would take me to the park or make play dates, you know, the things that happen with children. Um, you've heard of that. Um, and so yeah, it was an interesting experience, because I was within this epicenter of culture, and like at the time also, now LA is a little bit more diffuse as a concept, because we can be anywhere and work from anywhere and do important things, but at the time it was still a lot more of you'd see it on screen, you know. Where my dad worked, the restaurant that he worked at was in Santa Monica, and like the prime minister at the time of the UK came in, Bill Clinton came in, Gwyneth Paltrow and Brad Pitt, when they were dating, they came in like
That's
before the
crazy.
paparazzi found out. Like, even Britney Spears, when she was going off and having her bald moment, she actually pulled up in front, and I think left her kids in the car, and the valet had to go check. You know, it was like a whole,
Oh
Oh
my
that
my
was just
God.
God.
always happening, right? And so I grew up with these stories. My dad would come home every night and like tell me these stories. And then, so that was one aspect. But then I wasn't really doing anything. Like, I would sit with my mom, who was just like in her bed, and we'd watch TV. And so I lived in almost this imaginary world almost constantly. Whether I was hearing stories from my dad about sort of the brink of imaginary that LA is, right? And then I would look on screen, and I was going to see the people that my dad would be talking about seeing. Um, and then also, like, my dad too, but my mom was very into different forms of healing and trying to figure out how to like crack the code. And that was a very sort of, I was just involved in all these different types of spirituality that just sort of washed over me, which is interesting, because I think at that age you're just sort of I always think of it like when you're a reptile and you're in the boiling pot of water, and you don't notice if it's boiling gradually. So all of the strange stuff that was happening at home, I didn't really realize it. And then I went to school, and I was like, oh my God, dude, like, this is like people are crazy. Like, I didn't think that I was the one that was having sort of this alternative experience. to the point where I dropped out of second grade. Like I was 7 years old,
Oh my God.
dropped out of school. I got the flu, and my mom was like, your body is telling you that you should be homeschooled because you're psychic and you have superpowers.
Oh my
Oh my
God.
God. I
And
love
she was like,
that.
if you drop out, if you don't go back and we homeschool you, like you will get better. Which is funny, but also like I'm 7, so I'm definitely gonna get better at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is the flu. But that worked. That totally worked on me. And so like, but then I went back, and then Child Protective Services showed up and they're like, no, 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 wrap it up. So then I went into like third grade, and so yeah, I think my upbringing was so sort of like off the wall, but also very like internalized, right? So it wasn't something would happen and then I would share it. Like I would just, everything was very like, okay, this is happening, and we're moving through it, but it's still happening. And with my mom's illness, it was like, she's actually better now, thankfully. It was so much better, but at the time it seemed very much an incurable situation. And so you're living with that feeling of this situation that we're in right now is forever. That's it. Like, and the only way out was possibly these interesting healing methods, like the guy in Malibu who told my mom to like douse herself in blue water every 30 minutes in a clockwise motion. Yeah, he was a scam artist. But it's just that was just like one of many things. And so yeah, growing up, I didn't feel like there was any sort of typical path. Like there was never like a typical path that was charted for me, or the future wasn't even like spoken of, honestly. And so, but both my parents are very creative, and so that was always just always what we did in our spare time, was make stuff. Or my mom always tried to write even though she was sick. And my dad is a musician, and like he would always like play music before he went to the restaurant and stuff. And so basically when I was in high school, dropped out again. I dropped out of freshman year. I went to Santa Monica High School, which is like massive, massive, massive high school. And I didn't like the socialization skills were just like, there was nothing there. So I would walk around Samo High, which is a big school, and I just wouldn't know how to talk to anyone. Because middle school, like I didn't really like my friends. So I knew as much. I was kind of like, I'm not going back to those girls. But I didn't know what to do. So then I think honestly, just 3 weeks into that year, I dropped out. And that was truly an interest. That was like the moment I think that changed everything, because it was finally, I was taking the reins of my path without really knowing what that meant. But yeah, then actually like all of this trippy stuff happened with my mom, and then she's in a much better place now health wise, which is amazing. But we all had to like collectively hit rock bottom during that year. Then I went back into school, and went to like a school in West LA, because I lived in West LA in Los Angeles. And then I went to an arts high school. So I went to 3 different high schools. And the third high school is really, it really changed everything for me, because I made the choice to go to that school. I had to take 2 buses to get downtown every day. It was across town. I had never been downtown, and downtown Los Angeles is now kind of, it's a lot more developed now, but at the time my parents were like, what do you mean downtown? Like there's what are you talking about? Like it was quite dangerous. But there's a certain area that is by the courthouse, and it doesn't matter. Geographically, it was a safer area of downtown. And so my parents were like, okay, if you want to go there, you have to take the buses. So I got on the bus every day. And it was like this moment of, just taking control and figuring out how to break out of this bubble that had sort of just been like forced upon all of us because of this weird illness, essentially. And and then yeah, in the arts high school, it was the first year I went was the first year that it opened. So it was a brand new public school, and the rules were so random. Like the people, they couldn't figure things out. It was beautiful. The campus was beautiful and freshly built. And all the kids were kind of walking around being like, what are we gonna make this place? Like, what are we gonna do? And um, but it's hilarious because you didn't have to audition. Like it was just there were just kids that decided to go, but everyone was kind of everyone had made the choice actually to be
That's so
there,
interesting.
you know, which is
Yeah.
not, you can't say that for every high school. And so that really changed the trajectory of my life because I started I was in theater, which I wouldn't say I was a theater kid. I just really enjoyed um there's like an element of me that's like I like performance art, and so I think that's sort of what I was and comedy and things like that. And um but yeah, after that everything changed because I couldn't deny the fact that what really made me feel connected to myself was art in different forms.
Mm.
So and slowly that like socialized me. I think I'm still um figuring that out, I think, but that's, you know, that's just what makes me me, and that's beautiful. And I'm not fighting that anymore. There's less shame about that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like everyone who I meet who either had like a weird like socialization experience, was homeschooled, whatever, like they're always just like much more themselves, it feels like, because there wasn't as much conditioning. And I think it's a really special thing. Like all of my favorite people who I've met are like homeschool kids or just like people who had weird upbringings like that. So
Yeah.
it's cool you got to experience that and like not have to conform as much.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
I'm a
it's
homeschool fail. I'm a homeschool failure.
But also
yeah.
the experience of like going to like arts high school, I've always been so curious about, because also just like, I mean, especially in LA. LA in general, I feel like is such like a funny enigma because of like what you see on TV about it and what kids like fantasize about it. Like for me as a kid, I feel like that was like the coolest thing ever to watch on TV as like a TV show, like Victorious and shit like that, which like obviously is like it's a TV show, but like I feel like that is probably like a version of how it felt as a child because everything just feels so big and like magical.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely an aspect of that. And also I think, you know, when you grow up in a situation like that, it's just I lived in a pocket of town that was so boring, like truly so boring. A lot of grad students from UCLA lived in that neighborhood. And then I begged my parents to move to Brentwood, which is hilarious because we lived in West LA, and the listeners can't see this, but I'm making a very tiny line with my fingers. So we moved 1 mile north to Brentwood, which is just because I was so ashamed of living in West LA because I went when I moved to when I dropped out of second grade, I then went into a new school district for third grade, which was a much wealthier school district. So like it was kids of producers, kids of lawyers, kids of whatever, agents, and the demographic was just completely different. And so
Mm.
I always hid that I lived in West LA, and then somehow they fucking found out, these kids, these spies. Um, and so I had a breakdown. I told my dad we got to move to Brentwood because I was a terrible liar, and so I lied and I said I moved to Brentwood. And so then I told my dad, I was like, we need to move to Brentwood. Like, what are we gonna do? And lo and behold, our apartment building was slated for demolition the next year, and so
Whoa.
we
That's
moved
crazy.
a mile north. And then Brentwood is even more boring. Like at the time, it was, now it's a little bit hip, and there's like a bar, Pure Bar, and you know and then juice bars and
Mm.
bars and whatever bars. But back then it was just boring grandmas like buying like old cookies and stuff. So I was always chasing this. I was
Yeah.
chasing the LA dream in a sense, but but you know, day to day it was just very, very normal feeling.
Mm.
And even my dad like going and waiting on these people, I just was kind of like, oh, that's just, those are the people that go to restaurants, because we didn't go to restaurants growing up. So I just thought like, oh, that's where celebrities are, at all the restaurants.
At restaurants.
At restaurants.
I
All of
love
them.
that.
Yeah.
No, it's so funny to think about the things that you thought of when you were a kid and to think of them in comparison to now, like, or just think of it in comparison to the reality of it. Cause I feel like I have so many instances of that. Or even
Yeah.
just like wanting to move to like Brentwood, things that just like seemed so much bigger than they actually
Mm.
are in reality when you were a kid.
Totally. Yeah.
I
A lot
also
of things are skewed.
Yeah.
I always wonder if there's like I can never tell if it was just all kids who looked at like arts stuff and like Hollywood and like films and like being like famous writing and stuff like that as like this magical thing, or if like kids had different versions of that, because that was so my magical thing, you know, and my like I can't imagine a world where I somehow like am a part of that world. But like I wonder if that's really even like consistent for all kids or not, because like, and I also wonder why as a kid that's such like a huge fascination.
Yeah, I think so. My theory is nobody wants to be famous past, no one wants to be famous past like 25.
Mhm.
So like no one, so you either get famous or you're quite very much on track by 25 or 26. And then and 25, I'm sorry, but I'm being so generously late right now. Cause for me, it was like 22. But I think I did grow up thinking that fame was like what you had to be. And I
Mm,
think there's a certain element of, again, being in LA where you're just kind of like, oh, those people get to go to restaurants.
yeah. I want to go to
And
restaurants. I guess I have to be famous.
Yeah.
like that's why they let you in there, right? But yeah, I think we like look at famous people while we're growing up and we put a certain amount of importance on their life rather than, and I actually think that's what's kind of cool about Substack specifically. I mean, there's a lot of different versions of that, but what I'm familiar with is Substack because you can read um, just random people's daily experiences and it kind of evens the playing field um, of comparison with
Mm.
like, what is the value of someone who gets to go to the Met Gala versus someone who gets, is that today? No, it's, I was like, I'm being topical. Versus someone who has like a dog they love and, a home that they're putting together. And, but yeah, I think I really have like a thing where I'm kind of like, when I see people who are going for a certain amount of fame or celebrity or whatever that is, I'm like, damn, are they going to hit that point
Mm.
where they get it, or are they going to get old enough to realize it's not worth it, and like that's not what makes a worthwhile life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, that's so interesting. I think also like to add to that, just like I feel like now the line is so blurred between like what even fame is anymore. Cause I feel like obviously when we were kids, it was so obvious. It's like fame is like Gwyneth Paltrow going to a restaurant, like that's fame. But now it's like someone on Substack or TikTok could be considered famous. And like,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. And that is interesting too, because but I think, yeah, I think about that too. Because of course, success on a platform is having a large audience in theory, right? And so, but I think back in the day, we thought that famous people owed us everything. And that's why we got really, upset when someone like Britney Spears decided to just like, have a different attitude. And that then she became demonized and she was insane. It's like, but that's just not the truth anymore. And so I think there's a certain amount of the delusion of what fame is. And I think there's like a youthful delusion there where if you're famous, everything's kind of taken care of for you. People love you, like people will love you. Not true. Like it's your money is no longer an issue. Also not true. Like you can be very famous and have like extreme money issues, right? But yeah, I think it's actually like democratizing fame through the internet is good
Yeah.
to a certain extent. but there's also like a weird side of it too, where like anyone thinks they can get it at any time. So you wake up like, especially when you're younger, you can like wake up and be like, oh, why am I not there today? And it's like, again, it's all this like illusion of there's a woman who had a what is it called? A writing mentorship on Substack. And it was really interesting because in the application process, she called Substack a pyramid scheme. Love that. She's
Yeah.
a huge Substack. I think I don't remember, like, I didn't get the mentorship, so I threw her name out of my head. Obsessed with her. She's an icon, but I just don't remember it right now. But that really struck me, right? Where I thought, she's someone who's at the top, and so she can say that. But a lot of these things are kind of pyramid schemes to a certain extent. And that's not, I'm not saying we all need to just, I'm not saying that like cynically, but it's something to be aware of. And I never would have thought about that unless she said it so plainly, as someone who has risen to the top of that particular pyramid. So
I feel like the true, like genuine part, I guess, of those feelings of wanting to be famous or like seeking that out as a child, and like I feel like it's really just like a feeling of feeling surrounded by people and like feeling love and feeling like also just like the freedom to be and do, like freedom to pursue whatever dream it is.
yeah.
And it's just funny because I think that maybe we all just don't want to work 9 to 5 jobs. Like maybe that's where that feeling comes from. But it's just funny because I don't know, it's really easy to like then identify what actually feels right, like as a human, I guess, from just that idea.
Totally. Yeah. I think there was a really specific so during my Saturn return, one of one of my really specific lessons was just this realization. It was more a realization beyond fame. Like it was like fame, the fame thing was like something I really got out of my system early, but just realizing that the way that I wanted to express myself generally, I wanted to make sure that I could do it in private first. That was really important to me, and cultivating a home that I didn't feel like anyone needed to see, like for it to be valuable. And it was a really interesting, it was a really distinct feeling of I don't want to have to be on social media every day. I don't want to have to be thinking of something to say to whatever platform. I don't even, just generally. And what will be very valuable for me as a person is actually like privacy, to feel safe and like loved and love myself and enjoy without having to think about whether or not it's enough to be shared, if that makes sense. And yeah, it was so freeing, because which is the opposite of celebrities, like true, like famous people, like classic famous people. We are always like the general, we like think that they owe us something or get angry when we don't get it. And I think, again, I think a lot of that has been debunked, and I think that's really healthy. But yeah, it's, as I've gotten older, it's just, and that's like I love Substack because I can write something whenever I want, and I have my people, and it goes to their inbox, and if I get like a bunch of subscribers from a post, that's sick, and I can think about that, but that doesn't mean that I'm gonna go farm my memories for more shit about my ex because I didn't feel like writing about him again or at the time or whatever, but also I think Substack hates people like me a little bit.
Like the algorithm.
Yeah, like I think, well, it's been interesting because I've had a Substack for I started in 2021, and it was very much kind of like Blogspot almost, or WordPress adjacent. There was no algorithm. It was very much they hadn't figured out how to internally promote people or cross promote. And so it's just me being like posting to Instagram and hoping that I wasn't annoying people with big blocks of text.
Mm,
But I did challenge myself in that time. I was like, I'm going to write something every single week.
mm.
And that was really valuable. But now Substack is like, there's the notes section, and you can actually put videos and you can put audio.
It
Random.
stresses me out.
Yeah.
It's like another Twitter that I have to take care of. I'm like, I can't do that. I just
Yeah.
don't have it.
That's how
Yeah.
I feel about all social media sometimes, where I'm like, it's so overwhelming just having to keep up with everything and do it all the time. And I'm like, I don't have it in me.
Yeah. And you shouldn't have to. And I don't, and I think, um, I think telling it no is good, you know.
Yeah.
No is a
Yeah.
sentence. No is a full sentence. I've actually really enjoyed watching Substack notes like try to figure itself out, because I'm not on at this point I'm really just on, I just have an Instagram and I have the Substack, and I don't like, I open threads sometimes, and I open Twitter during the LA fires because you can follow some really helpful people there.
Mm.
Um, but what is the other one? Oh, TikTok.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
What's that big one? I have like a TikTok, and I just can't post on it. I literally
Yeah.
look at Alex Earl and her sister, and then I close the app and then delete it. And it's just, I used to look at Bethany Frankel. I don't know if you've ever looked at her TikTok. Do you know
Oh,
who
she's
that is?
the one that recommends the books, right? Right?
I don't know if
No.
she's done that. Maybe she does. She used to be a New York housewife, like of the,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and she's very like not your generation, and I do say that with so
Okay.
much love and respect. But
No, and that's
she's
No.
fine.
I was listening to a podcast, and the host of the podcast like is a really big Housewives fan, and that's why she like was talking about her, and that's the only reason I know her.
Yeah, she was like, she's big on a certain side of TikTok, and I had to stop looking at her because I just was like, what's going on? Like, why am I letting her in my head? And that's a big, just generally with social media, like it's like, why am I letting this person in my head? We think of it as something we're viewing, but we're just like actually letting them live
Yeah.
with us. Like I
Yeah.
was living with Bethany Frankel for 6 months when I was looking at her food every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She put on a rice cracker. It's like, I don't need that. Uh,
Mm.
but
Um,
but 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 that's why I can dedicate time to Substack notes, because I'm not going on all of the apps, and it's funny because it does feel kind of like this internal battle of like what people want Substack and Substack notes to be, and what Substack Incorporated wants it to be, because they want,
Yeah.
of course, to take over the world. Um,
mhm.
but everyone is like, please, like, don't look at the video tab, like no one click it, like we don't want it. Um, and then even adding like photos to the Substack notes thing has changed the way that I go through it, because your brain just wants to look at an image. It doesn't want to read a paragraph. It's obviously more work to do that, right? So it's
Mm.
like defeating the purpose of having like a writer forward platform when you allow even images or carousels. Like they do the little, you can put 6 images on a text on a post. So I'm just interested to see where it will go, because it was
Yeah.
so fun when it was just like basic, like beta stuff of just people typing
That's
stuff.
always like the fun era of an app or like a social media
Yeah.
platform. Like we relate to that so hard with like Instagram and Twitter. Like we were, I feel like early on those. And
Yeah.
it is just
And
not
it's
what that
so
was.
scary how it feels like everything gets to that point eventually where it's like not that, like even Substack
We just
now
need a
getting to
good
that
guy. We
point.
need a good guy to make an app.
You've been
I
saying that.
know.
Yeah, we just need one good guy.
I know. I know. I had a couple of years ago, before AI was, demonstrably all the things that it is, I said to my boyfriend, I was like, I want to make an app where it's like an oracle. So you open your phone and it's an AI like oracle. But what I would do is train the AI only on like spiritual texts. So it would have nothing else, right?
I love that idea. Yeah.
That's
And I was like, this
awesome.
is going to be sick. Like I need to get funding. But of course, like, oh, who am I? I'm like, what? I'm not connected in that way. And so I didn't go through. And then literally I saw someone be like there people are using ChatGPT as an oracle or to be like their tarot card interpreter or something. And someone said the first person who makes like an AI app specifically like this for the girlies is going to make millions. And I was like, damn, dude, like I had that fucking idea, but I'm not
Oh,
going to do it now. I don't really care. But I was like, I've never
You
had,
should. We
yeah,
need
we
someone
need that.
good to do it. Someone,
yeah, but
yeah.
but then I'm doing like, I've never opened ChatGPT. So I don't know. It feels like a big leap for me to be,
I
that
get that.
Yeah.
if I
But
can
some
make it,
tech guy is gonna take that from you. You know
I,
it.
I know.
But
But whatever. I mean, I hope if it gets out there, it's the thing is people are already doing it with ChatGPT. So if
Yeah.
one makes a more streamlined version, then have at it, I guess. Um, but yeah. Anyway, I don't know
Yeah.
why.
no.
No.
Well, I was also curious because you were talking about just like being on Substack for a long time, and I think Substack among like its changes as a platform has changed a lot in the writing field, and I'm curious, like with making publishing more accessible and just making writing in general a whole different field, like what has been your perception of seeing the writing field change?
Yeah, I think I I can speak personally. Like I think I learned like I literally like didn't really write before I started a Substack. I
Mm-hmm.
like wrote a little bit, but it was just such a challenge. It was a personal challenge to do it. And I started out because I was going to make like a meditation Substack and like meditation is very important to me and it was interesting to do that and lead with that and people especially because it was very much during like the height of COVID, people really wanted that sort of content and feeling connected with something grounding and so it was like right place right time for that but then I realized that the more that I tried to make content about it I like got further away from my personal practice um,
Mm,
and it
that's
was
so
not worth
interesting.
Yeah.
yeah
Yeah.
it was not worth it to do that and I was also doing like how do you say the personalized meditations. I was like making meditations for people one on
Mm.
one. And I also did like meditation, like collections, like audio meditations. And it was fine. But I just, again, like the more that I had to do it as a job, I just realized that I couldn't sacrifice that side of myself, like as it was my sanity.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting because like Substack essentially just gives everyone the opportunity to have that personal journey in some way if they're open to it. And I think and it's like I think Substack Incorporated wants it to be like I'll get emails from them and it's like we are the new media. And I'm like, no, you're just like just be Tumblr, like be
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
okay. Like it's okay to be that. But I don't know. It's interesting to see how I really am just like Substack who will win is how it feels. Where I think half the people want, not even half. I don't even know if I honestly would really be so curious if they had internal, um, whatever, an internal chart of who
The
is
corpo
writing
people
what.
versus normal people.
Yes,
Yeah.
people who want, and there's nothing wrong. There's a couple people I follow, and I do actually love um following a handful of like specific political or news accounts because it's less of a barrage, right?
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I'm just so curious like how many people there are doing that versus how many like girls there are being like, and then
Yeah.
subway and like they were carrying roses and it smelled so heavenly, but I thought of him, it's like, and I don't know, but there's so much freedom like that comes from being able to write something like that and then someone else see it and
Mm.
I think that's only going to get more like the nice thing about notes is like it's interconnected, like there's an interconnected world that's happening and there are people that I'm seeing that I'm like building a different Substack that's like not about me but about wishes and that's going to be soonish, we'll see, but that's
Mm.
like
Yeah, no, I saw that like in your pages.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Wikipedia. But yeah, that's like that idea only came to me after being on Substack Notes and being like, oh, there's so many people that I would love to, like, I was like, oh, I'll write something about my own thoughts on wishes and wishing and birthdays. And then I kind of was like, I know what I think about that, but what do other people think about, what do these other girls I'm seeing on Substack Notes think about wishing and wishes and that ritual? And so that
Oh, I
is,
love that concept so much. It's
Yeah,
sweet. Yeah.
that's
I'm
really
excited
sweet.
about it. I'm excited about that. And that'll also be fun to do something that's like not focused around me and my like
Mhm.
whatever inner
Yeah.
fluctuations.
Because I feel like that's very intertwined. And you mentioned it earlier, just like writing about spirituality and just your personal journey with spirituality from your mom being awesome when you were younger and like just having all those like holistic like healing like methods and stuff. I'm curious about what your journey with spirituality looks like and how that has like changed your writing too.
Yeah. So yes, growing up was like so that was like the number one thing in the house. I would come into the bedroom and my dad would be like talking with my mom and it would just be talking about some like philosophy and um my mom was very she actually credits me for her spirituality because she said that I was very kind of like a trippy child. Like I would say like weird stuff and see like things and so that was she said that I was kind of the catalyst for her to go deeper into spirituality. And also she converted to Catholicism when I was 4 because my dad was like is Irish Catholic.
Mhm.
And so she was like, I wanted you to have like some sort of religious base, a community, which is interesting because then we would go to church and she would say the rosary, like take out the sinners part and put angels. And whenever they would say something during the sermon about us all being, you know, uh, children of whatever, she'd be like, no, we're all beautiful and there's no hell. And she would whisper and then give me like
Aw.
a peanut
Wait,
butter
that's really
sandwich.
sweet.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so it was interesting because she put us in specifically like made the choice, because conversion you have to go to classes and blah blah blah,
Mm.
uh, to like link me into this thing, and then was always sort of refining it and personalizing it. So that was a big, I mean, that was
That's
just
really cool though to have
of
that.
course, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it especially because like genetically, I have Irish Catholic and Jewish guilt like in my DNA. It's like it's just wound in there. I have no I can't escape it. So having her, trying to work against something that I think I've always had a little bit of like this, like as a kid, I would always be like, I'm sorry. And it doesn't for things that, I couldn't even be guilty for. Um, so yeah, that was a big, so there was like the Catholic Church, and then there were all these different books about healing and like angels and like energy. And then then there were the predatory healers that my mom went to. And or just like people that didn't really hit, like the hypnotist or the acupuncturist that said that her Jewish ancestors were mad at her for converting. They were like, that's why you're sick. Like, so there were a lot of, I saw as a child like the imperfection, I think, that a lot of people have in interpreting and sharing spirituality, if that makes sense. um
Mhm.
and and I also saw that there are just 1,000 ways to the same light, and accessing that. um and it all washed over me like, and I think in that way now I don't have a singular thing that I hold on to in terms of like a philosophy, because I just saw so many of them like literally like like guests in and out of the house. But that's not a like, I'm grateful for that. I'm so grateful for that. I think that's a really has helped me. But I think like I love like Thich Nhat Hanh is my favorite person to return to. Um, and there's that, so like there's like at my core, I think it's just sort of this like slightly Buddhist like approach to things. And also in that really spoke to me as a kid, because Buddhism doesn't try to run away from suffering, but instead tries to sit with it and understand it and find joy in moments. And like I'm someone who I think is uh like I'm okay with sitting with like feelings that aren't necessarily uh what someone would define as good, but I'm still like, but decoding them and taking away the color and the scary shapes around them and using them as ways to um so yeah, just sort of guide me. Like I think I learn as much from my like depressive, like sitting with my depressive periods,
Mm.
um as I do like the high flying ones where I get a bunch of things done, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I think like the spirituality that I was immersed in growing up, yeah, just gave me this like perspective that everything comes and goes, and in the same way, like everything is infinite, and it's all the same ultimately. Like all of these texts, like you can read a bunch of different things, but like the meditation thing is something that my mom would like force me to meditate. Like I wasn't allowed to get out of the bed until I'd meditated for a certain amount of time.
Aw.
So I like, but I had to sit with myself as a kid, and sometimes that would drift into imagination, but a lot of times it was just like sitting with this feeling of like energy and imagining ways to contact, these spirits or whatever. Um, and yeah, that's like the meditation thing is like very much most like I try to sit at least for 5 minutes every single day.
Mhm.
And if I fall out of that rhythm, I can feel it internally. Like it's to the
Yeah.
point that's like my compass.
Mhm.
Or I'll walk and like pray out loud, or like as silly as
Mm.
that sounds, but I walk my dog every day, and we have like our neighborhood, it's just the same walk. And so I'll like say very specific things that I'm grateful for. And like I think gratitude for me has become such a really, really important thing, because um I do feel really grateful for where I've been able to pull myself from, and the practices that I have now creatively, and the I don't know, I do feel very, very, very grateful. And so like figuring out how to tap into that, even with my boyfriend, I'll walk with my boyfriend, and I've trained him to do it with,
Aw.
which is how yeah, like being able to be comfortable with that language of gratitude is something that
Mhm.
we talked about a lot when I was growing up, but it was really, really tough. So it was really, really hard to really feel it, if that makes sense. And now
Mhm.
I'm like, I can really, really feel it. And I just want to make sure that I'm like always like I have it, and can affirm like how like, yeah, how much um how much there is to be grateful for, even on
Mhm.
like the
Yeah.
worst days.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even then the most important, I think, to be able to be like, okay, I feel like shit today, but what am I like? What do I have? What do I have?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Because we always have so much more than we are led to believe, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think like being taught to sit with that, especially at a young age, is such an awesome thing because I feel like as kids, we're obviously like our instinct is to sometimes just like run away from it or like detach from it, or that's like what we're conditioned to do just like growing up. And so to do the opposite of that and then just sit with that, that definitely like trains your brain in this crazy way for when you're older also.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
yeah. I also just wanted to ask as a final question to wrap up, if you could tell your younger self just like one thing about writing or creativity or like anything in general, what would it be?
Wow, that's beautiful.
Aw.
Um, that's a good question. I feel like my experience was such a like throw everything against the wall and see what sticks.
Mhm.
Creatively, like I did just so many different things. And it's so funny that writing is the thing I landed on, because it's like, girl, you probably could have done that earlier. Um, but it's called a piece of paper. But I think I would tell myself to just like be confident in my own ideas
Mhm.
and my own like instincts, and have like trust myself to just do what I want, if that makes sense, instead of being like what is best. Like with my family, I was trained to like do what was best for the group, and that really influenced me just generally with everything in life. But I think I would tell myself like learn to be a little bit more selfish, because that will improve every aspect of your life. Like, because selfishness can actually be a form of connection. Like, if you're always looking outward and trying to be good for everybody else, you actually won't figure out what is good for yourself. And I think the privacy thing that I learned when I was going through my Saturn return was actually a big part of like figuring out like what was really important to me only.
Yeah.
And then letting that guide how I interact with people and hopefully improve the world, one would hope. But it starts like very much within, and the personal choices.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I really like that. Thanks for sharing it. Because I feel like whenever you're like focusing on yourself and making yourself better, you're making the world better just by being better for yourself. That just like reminds me a lot about just like self-love. And I don't know, I've been listening to these audios recently about self-love because a psychic told me that I need to love myself better.
I love
So,
that.
but like one of the things that I like took away from the audio was just like, oh, you will always have yourself, and the relationship with yourself is the longest relationship you'll ever have. And that reminds me a lot of what you just said of just like being able to sit alone and like, yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And not being afraid of like, I think when I stopped being afraid of the the sadness that is inherent within me,
Mhm.
like it became like a beautiful piece of like the soil to work with, and
Yeah.
and in that way, like being able to hold it, it took time to like demand that of myself, so I would have told myself to demand that of myself
Yeah.
earlier.
Cool.
Mhm.
Aw. Well,
Aw.
thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. This was so fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, of
everything you said was
course.
so sweet. Like, well, I'm gonna
Yeah.
be editing this, but I'm gonna be like listening to it like advice. You know what I mean? Just like to
Like one of the
reincorporate it.
audios.
Yeah, like one of the self-love audios the psychic sent me. We also just have one more thing that we have all of our guests do. We have everyone read a thing out loud. We're trying to get Josh Ovalle on the podcast.
Yeah.
If you could,
Ovalle?
yeah,
Yeah.
if you could read it out loud, that'd be perfect for us.
Okay. I, James Francis, hereby request Josh Ovalle for collaboration with the Internet is Dead podcast. Please, Josh, be a guest on the podcast. We miss you.
Thank you
Yay.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on, and yeah,
Oh,
for
thank
everything you
you.
said. It was really sweet.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun, and
Yeah,
I'm
of
so glad that I got
course.
to have my coffee. So thank you for struggling the parallel park.
The Wishipedia
Yeah,
Substack
no, I'm so
also.
excited
I'm
about that. That
excited.
sounds really pretty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be fun. Actually, it'll be fun because with Wikipedia, I'm trying to do like uh more than one person featured. So it'd be fun to just do like a dual one of the two of you and see what your
Oh,
guys' are.
Oh,
I would love
yeah.
that. That'd be
That'd be
so
so.
sweet.
Aw, yeah.
Okay, definitely. Well, I'm gonna write that down.